Arvind Kapoor built a fortune from nothing, and he maintained it through a philosophy of zero patience. He operated 4 companies and 2 private jets with the same expectation: circumstances beyond a man's control or never a valid reason for failure. In 61 years, he had never missed a deadline or arrived late for a meeting. He demanded the same rigid punctuality from everyone in his orbit, creating an environment where efficiency was the only metric of value. On a Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., his driver of 11 years, Bahadur, was missing. When the car finally pulled up to the gate at 7:03, Arvind was already waiting in the doorway. He watched Bahadur climb out of the car, looking pale and shaken. Arvind didn't ask for an explanation. He told the man that after 11 years, failing to manage 3 minutes was unacceptable, and ordered him to collect his final pay and leave. Bahadur didn't argue or plead. He simply nodded, said, "Yes, sir," in his usual steady voice, and walked down the long gravel driveway without looking back. The silence was more unsettling to Arvind than an argument would have been. His strict enforcement of absolute power had worked so well that his longest-serving employee didn't even think to defend himself. It took 3 days for the silence to break. Arvind's daughter arrived at his office with a newspaper clipping, forcing him to look back at 6:57 a.m. on the morning of the firing. At exactly 6:57 a.m., Bahadur's daughter was hit by a car. Unable to wait for an ambulance, he carried her 3 blocks to a clinic, dropping her at 7 a.m. He drove straight to work, arriving at 7:03, terrified calling ahead would get him fired. Bahadur had performed a terrifying piece of psychological math. He prioritized his job over staying with his injured child because he knew his employer had no patience for excuses, regardless of the stakes. The flawless efficiency Arvind demanded had forced his driver to abandon a bleeding child at a clinic door just to protect his livelihood. Arvind realized the immediate consequence of his decision. By firing Bahadur on the spot, he had left the family uninsured and without income at the exact moment the girl required emergency observation and care. For 2 days, Arvind searched the city's working-class neighborhoods himself, navigating his luxury car through narrow, dimly lit streets he had never previously visited. He eventually found Bahadur in a small rented room. It was a space so modest and cramped that it stood in stark contrast to the palatial rooms in Arvind's mansion that sat empty and unused. This physical descent into Bahadur's world stripped away the isolation of Arvind's wealth. He was face to face with the extreme vulnerability of the people who kept his empire running. Arvind stood in the small doorway, facing Bahadur and his daughter, Priya, who was propped up on second-hand crutches. Bahadur's first instinct was to ask if something was wrong with the car. Even after being dismissed, his primary concern remained the schedule of the man who had fired him. Arvind asked the question that had been haunting him. Why hadn't Bahadur simply told him the truth that morning? Bahadur explained that in 11 years, Arvind had never asked a single question about his life, not his wife's passing, not his daughter's name. He believed an explanation wouldn't matter to a man who never once wondered if there was a reason to need one. Arvind realized that by demanding perfection while offering zero understanding, he had built a system where the most vital truths were intentionally kept from him. That evening, Arvind rehired Bahadur with a raise and full medical coverage for Priya's recovery. He sat in that small room and delivered a formal apology in his own halting, unpracticed words. At his daughter Divya's urging, he established an emergency fund for all his employees. It was a direct response to the impossible choice Bahadur had faced, ensuring that no one in his company would have to choose between their family's survival and their job security again. Over the following years, the mansion grounds became a second home for Priya. She spent her afternoons in the library while her father worked, as the relationship between the 2 men shifted into something closer to family. Arvind kept the newspaper clipping in his desk for the rest of his life. He had learned the hardest way possible that the 3 minutes he once considered a failure were actually the moments a father spent saving his daughter, and that the most important tool a leader has is the simple willingness to ask, "Is everything all right?"